I watched my mother thrust the papers across the kitchen table, her manicured nails tapping impatiently against the scholarship agreement. Sign it, Mira. Transfer it to your sister. My sister Chloe sat beside her, dabbing fake tears with a tissue, her eyes flickering with poorly concealed triumph. My father leaned against the counter, arms crossed, his silence a weapon he'd wielded against me my entire childhood. The scholarship was for Stanford, full ride. 4 years of freedom I'd earned through countless sleepless nights, through tutoring myself because my parents refused to pay for my SAT prep while they bought Chloe her third car. I'd scored a perfect 1600. I'd published research at 16. Stanford wanted me. Chloe needs this more than you, my mother said, using that same patronizing tone she'd used when she took my birthday money to buy Chloe a designer purse, when she gave away my childhood bedroom so Chloe could have a walk-in closet, when she enrolled Chloe in the piano lessons I'd begged for. You're smart enough to get scholarships anywhere. Your sister barely got into college. If she doesn't get into a good school, how will she find a husband? In my first life, the one I'd lived before I died at 23, exhausted and broken in a studio apartment I could barely afford because I'd given up everything for a family that never loved me, I had signed those papers. I'd told myself it was temporary, that I'd reapply next year, that family came first. I'd been such a fool. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I'd died, woken up on my 18th birthday with 16 years of memories flooding back, and I'd spent the last 6 months preparing for this exact moment. So I smiled at my mother, picked up the papers, and tore them in half. The slap came fast. My mother's palm connected with my cheek hard enough to snap my head sideways, the crack echoing in the suddenly silent kitchen. My father straightened, his expression darkening. Chloe gasped, her hand flying to her mouth in theatrical shock. "How dare you?" my mother hissed. "After everything we've done for you." "Done for me?" The laugh that bubbled up from my chest tasted bitter. "Name one thing, a single thing you've done for me that you didn't do for Chloe first, better, and more expensive." My mother's face flushed red. "We kept a roof over your head. We fed you. We clothed you. The legal bare minimum. Congratulations, you cleared the bar for not going to prison for neglect." I touched my stinging cheek, watching her recoil at my words. In my first life, I would have apologized immediately, would have backed down, would have signed whatever they wanted. But I'd already died once from being too weak. "I'm not giving Chloe my scholarship." "Then you can get out of this house," my father said, speaking for the first time. His voice was cold, final. "Tonight. Don't bother packing much. We bought all your things anyway." Considerate payment for raising an ungrateful brat. I'd expected this. In my first life, they'd used this exact threat, and I'd crumbled. The fear of homelessness at 18, of having nowhere to go, had been enough to make me sign away my future. But this time, I had an ace they didn't know about. "Fine," I said, standing. My legs didn't shake, my voice didn't waver. "I'll be out in an hour." My mother blinked, clearly expecting more fight. Chloe's face twisted with confusion. She'd wanted to see me beg. My father's jaw clenched, angry that his threat hadn't worked. I walked upstairs to my room, the smallest bedroom in the house, the one with the broken heating vent and the window that didn't lock properly, and pulled out my phone. I had one suitcase already half-packed because I'd known this was coming. I grabbed my laptop, my documents, the few pieces of jewelry my grandmother had left me before she died, which my mother had tried to claim for Chloe multiple times, and I called the number I'd saved 6 months ago. "Mira Chen?" The voice on the other end was professional, warm. "This is Patricia Knowles from Harvard Admissions. I wasn't expecting to hear from you until I need to accept your offer," I said. "All of it, the full scholarship, the on-campus housing, the research position. I know it doesn't start until August, but is there any way I can access the housing earlier, tonight?" There was a pause. "Tonight? Is everything all right?" "Family situation. I need to leave." Another pause, longer this time, then, "Let me make some calls. Can you get to Logan Airport?" "I can be there in 3 hours." "I'll arrange temporary housing and a flight." "Mira, are you safe right now?" Tears pricked my eyes. No one had asked me that in my first life. No one had cared. "I will be, thank you." We take care of our students, Patricia said firmly, especially ones who published in Nature at 17. See you soon? I'd published in Nature 3 months after my rebirth. It wasn't just that I remembered my research from my first life, the thesis I'd been working on when I died, exhausted and alone, in a life where I'd never gotten to finish my PhD, because I'd been too busy working 3 jobs to pay for my sister's wedding, my mother's medical bills from her elective plastic surgery, my father's business investments that always somehow lost money. No, this time I'd taken that research and I'd started earlier. I'd reached out to professors at MIT through email, presenting my hypothesis about quantum entanglement and its applications to data encryption. I'd been careful, professional, brilliant in a way that couldn't be dismissed as teenage arrogance because I'd backed everything with mathematical proofs. Professor David Chen, no relation though he'd joked about it, had been intrigued enough to meet with me. One meeting became a collaboration. 6 months later, we'd published together. My name as first author because the breakthrough had been mine. Harvard had called 3 weeks later. They'd offered me everything: full scholarship, stipend, guaranteed research position, early admission to their PhD program if I maintained my GPA. They'd told me I was exactly the kind of student they wanted: driven, innovative, already contributing to the field before she'd even graduated high school. I hadn't told my family. I'd learned in my first life that they would find a way to ruin it, to take it from me, to give it to Chloe somehow. So I'd accepted quietly, asked them to keep my admission confidential, and I'd waited. I'd waited for the Stanford scholarship announcement, knowing my family would try to force me to give it to Chloe. I'd let them think Stanford was my only option. I'd let them think they had power over me. And now, as I zipped my suitcase and walked down the stairs for the last time, I saw their faces as they realized I was actually leaving. "You'll be back," my mother called after me, her voice shrill. "You'll come crawling back when you realize you can't survive on your own." "Where will you even go?" Chloe sneered. "You don't have any friends. No one wants you." My father said nothing, but his expression was smug, satisfied. He thought I'd broken. He thought I'd be back tomorrow apologizing, signing those papers. I paused at the door, suitcase in hand, and turned back. "I'm going to Harvard. They headhunted me 6 months ago. Full scholarship, research position, PhD track. I've been accepted since March." The silence was absolute. That's impossible," my mother stammered. "You didn't apply to Harvard. We have all the mail. We would have seen. I did everything online. I used my school email, my own accounts that you don't have access to. I've been planning this for months." I looked at Chloe, whose face had gone pale. "You can have the Stanford scholarship. I hope it makes you happy. I hope you manage to pass freshman year." "You're lying," Chloe whispered. "You're just trying to—" I pulled out my phone, opened my email, and turned the screen toward them. The acceptance letter from Harvard was there, official and undeniable. "Congratulations on your admission to Harvard College. Full scholarship, research position in the Department of Physics. Professor David Chen has specifically requested to continue your collaboration." My mother lunged for the phone, but I pulled it back. "You can verify it if you want. Call them. They'll confirm I'm enrolled for fall semester. They're arranging emergency housing for me tonight because I told them my family situation was unsafe." "Unsafe?" My father's face turned purple. "We gave you everything. You gave Chloe everything. You gave me scraps and called it love." I shouldered my bag. "I'm done. Don't contact me. Don't come to Cambridge. I'm not your daughter anymore, and Chloe is not my sister. You made that clear every day of my life." I walked out the door, and I didn't look back. The flight to Boston was surreal. Patricia had arranged everything: a red-eye flight, temporary housing in a graduate student apartment whose resident was away for the summer, a meal stipend, even a welcome packet waiting for me at the airport. As the plane took off, I watched California disappear beneath the clouds and felt the weight of 18 years, 34 really, counting my first life, begin to lift from my shoulders. I'd spent 6 months preparing for this moment, but the preparation had started the moment I'd woken up on my 18th birthday with memories of a future I'd already lived. 6 months earlier, I'd opened my eyes on March 15th, my 18th birthday, and immediately vomited over the side of my bed. The memories hit me all at once. 23 years old, dying in a studio apartment I could barely afford, alone because I'd alienated everyone who'd ever tried to help me by constantly choosing my family over myself. Dead from exhaustion, from stress, from the slow grinding horror of poverty I couldn't escape because I was too busy bailing out the family that hated me. I remembered signing over the Stanford scholarship. I remembered working through college at state school, taking 6 years to graduate because I could only afford part-time enrollment. I remembered Chloe dropping out of Stanford freshman year to marry her boyfriend. The scholarship wasted, my sacrifice meaningless. I remembered my mother calling me when Chloe's divorce went through, asking me to help with legal fees. My father showing up at my waitressing job to ask for money for his latest failing business. Chloe moving back home and my parents demanding I send money to support her while she found herself. I remembered the final phone call 3 days before I died. My mother screaming that I was selfish for not sending more money, that I'd always been the difficult one, that Chloe needed a new car and why couldn't I just help family? I'd hung up, I'd cried, and then I'd gone to work my overnight shift at the hospital where I cleaned floors because the PhD program I'd fought so hard to get into had lost its funding and I'd had to drop out. 2 days later, I'd collapsed at work. Heart attack, the doctor said later, stress-induced. I was 23, and then I'd woken up at 18 in my childhood bedroom with my mother's voice calling up the stairs that breakfast was ready and I'd better not make Chloe late for her college tour. I'd spent that entire first day in a daze confirming details. The date was right. I was 18 again. Everything that had happened, the scholarship, the sacrifice, the slow death, was 5 years in the future. This time, I would not make the same mistakes. The first thing I did was secure my documents. Birth certificate, social security card, passport. I found them all in my father's filing cabinet and I made copies. Storing them in a safety deposit box I opened at a bank across town using money I'd been saving from my part-time job at the library. The second thing I did was change all my passwords. Email, bank accounts, everything. I set up new accounts my parents didn't know about, using my school email instead of the family email address my mother monitored. The third thing I did was research early admission to college. In my first life, I'd waited for regular decision because my parents had insisted, wanting to compare financial aid packages, which really meant they wanted control over where I went. This time, I started applying in April for rolling admissions, for early programs, for anything that would get me accepted and out before senior year even ended. But it was the fourth thing that changed everything. I remembered my PhD research. I'd spent 5 years in my first life developing a theoretical framework for quantum data encryption using entangled particles. I'd been close to a breakthrough when I'd died, close enough that I'd had the mathematical proofs sketched out in my notes. I had those notes in my head, every equation, every insight, every late-night realization. And this time, I didn't have to wait until grad school to pursue it. I emailed Professor Chen at MIT with my hypothesis. I wrote a clear, concise explanation of my framework, including preliminary proofs. I sent it expecting nothing, just hoping for advice, maybe a reading list. He responded in 6 hours asking to meet. 2 weeks later, I took the train to MIT. Professor Chen was a small man in his 50s with wire-rimmed glasses and an intensity that reminded me of every brilliant academic I'd ever worked with. He'd printed out my email and covered it in notes. "This is extraordinary," he said, skipping pleasantries. "You're how old?" 18. "And you came up with this framework yourself?" "Yes." It wasn't technically a lie. I had come up with it, just in another timeline. "I want to work with you on this, properly. Collaborative research, co-authorship, the works. Are you planning to study physics in college?" "Yes, but I hesitated. "My family situation is complicated. I need to get accepted somewhere with a full scholarship, and I need it to happen before they can interfere." Professor Chen studied me for a long moment. "Are you safe at home?" "Physically, yes. Emotionally," I shrugged. "I'm the family disappointment, even though I have a perfect GPA and my sister barely passes her classes. I'll be fine once I get out." "All right, here's what we're going to do. You work with me on this research. We publish. And then I make some calls to colleagues at Harvard, MIT, Caltech. You're exactly the kind of student they fight over. Does that work?" I'd wanted to cry. That works. We published in Nature in June. The paper caused a stir in the quantum physics community, not just because of the breakthrough, but because the first author was an 18-year-old high school student. Harvard called me directly. MIT followed. Caltech sent a handwritten letter from the department chair. I chose Harvard because they offered the earliest move-in date, the most comprehensive scholarship, and because Professor Chen had a friend there who could mentor me, and because in my first life I'd dreamed of Harvard, but never thought I was good enough. I was good enough. I'd always been good enough. I'd just been so beaten down by my family that I couldn't see it. The plane landed at Logan at 2 a.m. Patricia Knowles herself was waiting at baggage claim, a tall black woman in her 50s with kind eyes and an efficient manner that immediately put me at ease. Mira Chen, she said, shaking my hand. I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances, but I'm glad you called us. How are you holding up? Better than I expected? It was true. I felt light, almost giddy, free. We have you set up in graduate housing temporarily. One of our PhD students is doing field research in Peru for the summer, so her apartment is available. You'll need to find permanent housing before the fall semester, but this will work for now. We've also arranged for a campus job if you need additional income beyond the stipend, and I've scheduled you to meet with a counselor next week to discuss everything. Thank you, my voice cracked. I didn't know where else to go. Patricia's expression softened. Harvard takes care of its own. You're one of ours now. Come on, let's get you to campus. The apartment was tiny but clean, a studio in a building near campus with actual heating and a window that locked. There was food in the fridge, basics, but more than enough, and a welcome basket from the physics department with a Harvard mug, some snacks, and a note from Professor Chen's colleague, Dr. Sarah Martinez, saying she looked forward to meeting me. I set down my suitcase, locked the door behind me, and finally let myself break down. I cried for the girl I'd been in my first life, who'd given up everything and gotten nothing in return. I cried for the family I'd never had, the love I'd craved and never received. I cried because I was finally safe. And then I unpacked my laptop, opened my email, and started planning. My family would not let this go easily. I knew them too well. My mother would try to guilt me back. My father would use money as leverage. Chloe would play victim, would tell everyone I'd abandoned the family, would try to make me the villain. In my first life, I'd come back, I'd apologized, I'd signed the papers. This time, I would destroy them before they could destroy me. The first email came 3 days later, from Jennifer Chen, mother. Subject, we need to talk, Mira. I know you're upset and I understand you needed some space, but this has gone too far. You can't just run away to Boston and expect everything to be fine. We're family. Family doesn't abandon each other over a disagreement. Your father and I have discussed it and we're willing to compromise. You can keep your Harvard scholarship, but we need you to help pay for Chloe's education at Stanford. We've already accepted the scholarship in her name and the tuition bill is coming due. Surely you can understand that we can't afford to pay for her school on our own. You know your father's business has been struggling. You've always been the smart one, Mira. The responsible one. I know you'll do the right thing for your sister. She needs you. Please transfer $25,000 by the end of the month for her first semester tuition. We can discuss payment plans for the rest later. Love, Mom. I stared at the email for a full minute, rage building in my chest. They'd accepted the Stanford scholarship in Chloe's name, using my information. That was fraud. They were demanding I pay $25,000, more than my entire research stipend for the year, for Chloe's tuition at a school she'd gotten into by stealing my scholarship. In my first life, I would have panicked. I would have tried to fix it, would have borrowed money, would have destroyed my credit trying to keep the family happy. This time, I forwarded the email to Patricia Knowles with a brief explanation. She called me within the hour. Mira, this is identity theft and fraud. We need to report this to Stanford immediately and potentially to the police. I know, I took a breath. I need documentation of everything. Every email, every demand. I need a paper trail because I know they're not going to stop. You're building a case. For a restraining order, yes, and possibly for legal action if they continue. I'd learned in my first life that verbal promises meant nothing. Documentation was everything. Is that wrong? It's smart, Patricia said firmly, and we'll support you. I'm forwarding this to our legal department. In the meantime, do not respond to any emails from your family. Save everything, but don't engage. I didn't respond, but I watched the emails pile up. My mother sent 12 more over the next 2 weeks, each one progressively more desperate and angry. My father sent 3, all of them threatening to cut me off from my inheritance, which didn't exist. They'd been in debt my entire life. Chloe sent 27, ranging from tearful pleas about sisterly love to vicious attacks calling me selfish, jealous, and cruel. I saved every single one. I also reached out to Stanford's admissions office and explained the situation. They were horrified. The scholarship was merit-based and non-transferable. They immediately rescinded Chloe's acceptance and began fraud proceedings against my parents. The lawsuit notification arrived at my family's house on July 15th. My mother's email that night was incoherent with rage. From Jennifer Chen, mother. Subject: you destroyed your sister's life. How could you do this to us? Stanford is suing us for fraud. Your father could go to jail. Chloe is devastated. She's been crying for 3 days straight. The neighbors all know now. Everyone is talking about us, and it's all your fault. All we ever did was love you and raise you, and this is how you repay us? By destroying your own family? Chloe was supposed to start at Stanford in the fall, and now she has nothing because of your selfishness. You were always jealous of her, always bitter that she was prettier and more popular. You couldn't stand that she might be happy, so you had to ruin everything for her. Don't bother coming home for Christmas. You're not welcome here anymore. We don't have a daughter named Mira. I hope you're happy. I read the email twice, then filed it with the rest. I was happy. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, I was genuinely happy. Summer in Cambridge was beautiful. I spent my days working with Dr. Martinez on my research, expanding the quantum encryption framework into new applications. We were already planning a second paper. Professor Chen came down from MIT twice to consult, bringing his graduate students and creating an impromptu research group that met at a coffee shop near Harvard Yard. I made friends, real friends, not the superficial acquaintances I'd had in high school who'd always liked Chloe better. Maya was a physics major from India who was brilliant and funny and didn't care that I was younger than the other students. James was a math prodigy from Georgia who'd graduated high school at 16 and understood what it was like to be different. Dr. Martinez treated me like a colleague rather than a child, trusting me with real responsibilities and challenging me to think harder. For the first time in my life, both lives, I felt like I belonged somewhere. I also met with the campus counselor, Dr. Ellen Reeves, who specialized in family estrangement. She helped me process the guilt I felt about cutting off my family, the complicated grief of losing people who'd never really loved me in the first place. You're mourning the family you should have had, she said during one session, not the family you did have. That's normal and healthy. It's okay to be sad about what you didn't get, even while you're relieved to be free. They're still sending emails, I told her. Fewer now, but they haven't stopped. My mother says I've destroyed the family. My father says I'll regret this when I'm older. Chloe says I'm dead to her. And how do you feel about that? Free, I said. And I meant it. The fall semester started in September. I moved into my permanent dorm, a double in Canada Hall, where my roommate, Jasmine, was a pre-med student from California who kept our room organized and didn't mind my late-night study sessions. Classes were challenging but exhilarating. I'd already taken most of the introductory courses in my first life, but experiencing them again with the benefit of hindsight made me appreciate the foundations more. And the advanced courses, quantum mechanics, advanced calculus, electromagnetic theory, were exactly as difficult and rewarding as I remembered. I was thriving, and then in October, my family showed up on campus. I was leaving the physics building after a lab session when I saw them standing by the entrance to Harvard Yard. My mother, my father, and Chloe, all dressed like they were going to a funeral, looking dramatically out of place among the casually dressed students. My heart rate spiked. I stopped walking, frozen on the sidewalk. My mother saw me first. Mira, finally! I turned and walked the other direction. Don't you dare run away from us! My father's voice bellowed across the quad. Students turned to stare. I pulled out my phone and called campus police as I speed walked toward the library. This is Mira Chen, student ID H2034598. I have family members harassing me on campus. I have a no-contact order on file. They're currently near Memorial Hall. Stay on the line, the dispatcher said. Officers are en route. Behind me, I could hear my mother shrieking. After everything we did for you, we drove 18 hours to see you, and you called the police on your own mother? I ducked into the library and waited by the security desk. 2 campus police officers arrived within 3 minutes. Mira Chen, one asked. I nodded. Your family is outside. Do you want to speak with them with us present? No, I have a no-contact order filed with the university. They were notified. They're violating it by being here. The officer nodded. We'll escort them off campus and remind them of the consequences if they return. Through the library windows, I watched them approach my family. My mother was crying, my father was arguing, Chloe was recording everything on her phone, probably for social media sympathy points. The officers were professional but firm, and eventually my family left. I sat in the library for 2 hours, shaking, before I felt calm enough to go back to my dorm. The video Chloe posted went viral overnight. TikTok video, 2.3 million views. Chloe crying with dramatic music playing. My sister won't even talk to us. We drove 18 hours to try to fix our relationship after she abandoned the family, and she called the police on her own mother. Our mom just wanted to see her, to make sure she's okay, and Mira had us escorted off campus like we're criminals. Cut to footage of campus police talking to my parents. This is what Harvard does to people. They turn you against your own family. My sister used to be kind and sweet, and now she's so cold. She won't answer our calls or emails. She won't come home for holidays. And when we tried to visit her, she treated us like strangers. Close-up of Chloe's face, tears streaming. I miss my sister. I just want my sister back. If you know Mira Chen at Harvard, please tell her that her family loves her and we just want to talk, please. The comments were split between people calling me heartless and people asking if there was more to the story. Several people pointed out that you don't get a no-contact order for no reason, but the video spread, and by morning I had dozens of messages from people I barely knew asking if I was okay or telling me I should reconcile with my family. Dr. Martinez found me in the lab that afternoon, looking shell-shocked at my laptop. Is this you? She asked, showing me her phone with Chloe's video playing. I nodded mutely. Okay, first. Are you safe? Do we need to increase security? I think so. The no-contact order should keep them away legally. Second, do you want to respond publicly? I don't know. Will it make it worse? Dr. Martinez sat down beside me. In my experience, family members who show up uninvited after being told to stay away and then blast you on social media are not people who will stop on their own. They want a reaction. They want control. You have 2 options. Ignore it completely and let it blow over, or tell your side of the story. I'm not good at social media drama. You don't have to be. But you should know. Several people in the physics community have already started asking questions. They know you, know your work. They're not buying the heartless daughter narrative. That's when Professor Chen called. Mira, I saw the video. Are you all right? I'm fine, just overwhelmed. I'm going to tell you what I tell all my students. The truth is your best defense. You don't have to share your entire life story, but you might want to set the record straight before this narrative gets away from you. I thought about it for a long time. In my first life, I'd been so afraid of conflict, so desperate to keep the peace, that I'd let my family control the narrative. I'd let them paint me as the ungrateful daughter who'd abandoned them, and I'd believed it myself. This time, I had receipts. I created a Twitter thread that evening. I kept it factual, calm, and devastatingly thorough. Thread 115. Since a video about me is going viral, I want to set the record straight about why I have no contact with my family. This will be long and it will be uncomfortable, but it's all true, and I have documentation for everything I'm about to say. 215. I was the academic child in a family that valued my sister's looks over my achievements. Despite having perfect grades and test scores, I was told repeatedly that I wasn't as valuable as my sister because she was prettier and more likable. 315. My parents paid for my sister's SAT prep, college counseling, and applications. I paid for my own by working part-time at the library. They bought her 3 cars. I saved for 2 years to buy a laptop for school. 4:15. When I earned a full-ride scholarship to Stanford, my parents demanded I give it to my sister, who had barely gotten into college. They told me I was smart enough to get scholarships anywhere and that my sister needed it more. 5:15. When I refused, they kicked me out of the house with 1 hour's notice. I was 18. It was May of my senior year. I had nowhere to go. 6:15. Fortunately, I had already been accepted to Harvard with a full scholarship and research position. I had hidden this from my family specifically because I knew they would try to take it from me or sabotage it. 7:15. My family then fraudulently accepted the Stanford scholarship in my sister's name without my consent or knowledge. Stanford discovered the fraud and began legal proceedings. 8:15. My family has since sent me over 50 emails demanding money, threatening me, and blaming me for destroying the family. I have saved every single one and filed them with the university as part of my no-contact order. 9:15. The no-contact order exists because my family's communications became increasingly threatening. They were told multiple times not to contact me or come to campus. 10:15. Yesterday, they showed up at Harvard unannounced and uninvited, violating the no-contact order. When I called campus police, they filmed it and posted a video framing me as the villain. 11:15. This is a pattern of behavior that has continued my entire life. My accomplishments are minimized, my boundaries are violated, and when I assert myself, I am painted as the ungrateful one. 12:15. I have tried for years to have a relationship with my family. I have sacrificed my own needs, my own happiness, my own opportunities. It was never enough. It would never have been enough. 13:15. Setting boundaries is not abandonment. Protecting yourself from people who hurt you is not cruelty. Refusing to be manipulated is not selfishness. 14:15. To everyone messaging me saying I should forgive my family, you don't know the full story. You don't know what it's like to be the scapegoat child in a family that sees you as a resource rather than a person. 15:15. I am safe, I am happy, I am exactly where I should be. And I will not apologize for choosing my own well-being over people who have never chosen me. The thread went more viral than Chloe's video. Within 24 hours, I had over 100,000 likes and thousands of supportive comments. Other people shared their own stories of family estrangement. Academic Twitter rallied around me. Professors and researchers who saw themselves in my story, who'd also been the smart ones, expected to sacrifice everything for siblings who coasted through life. Dr. Martinez retweeted it with a simple comment. I am so proud of this brilliant young woman who has overcome more obstacles at 18 than most of us face in a lifetime. If this is what heartless looks like, we need more heartless women in STEM. Professor Chen posted, some families build you up, others tear you down and expect you to thank them for it. Mira Chen chose herself, and the academic community is better for it. The physics department at Harvard issued a statement supporting me and confirming they had documentation of my family's harassment. And then, Stanford's admissions office released a public statement, Stanford University official statement. We are aware of recent social media posts regarding Mira Chen and her family's use of her merit-based scholarship. We want to be clear. Ms. Chen earned her scholarship through her exceptional academic achievements. The attempt to transfer this scholarship to another family member without Ms. Chen's consent or knowledge constituted fraud. Ms. Chen properly declined our offer to attend Stanford, and we respect her choice to attend Harvard. The subsequent attempt to use her scholarship credentials for another applicant resulted in legal action, which is still pending. We strongly support students who must make difficult decisions regarding family relationships in pursuit of their education. Ms. Chen's choice to prioritize her academic future was courageous, and we commend her for it. The statement effectively ended the debate. Chloe's video was taken down, or she deleted it. I didn't care which. Her social media accounts went private. My mother's Facebook post asking for prayers for her ungrateful daughter was flooded with comments calling her out, and she deleted it within hours. My father tried one last email, threatening to sue me for defamation. I forwarded it to Harvard's legal department and blocked his email address. I never heard from any of them again. The spring semester of my freshman year was when everything truly began to fall into place. Dr. Martinez and I published our second paper in February, this time in Physical Review Letters. The work on quantum encryption had evolved into a broader exploration of entanglement applications in secure communications, and it was generating serious interest from both academic and industry circles. In March, I was invited to speak at a quantum computing conference in San Francisco. At 18, I was the youngest speaker by nearly a decade. Dr. Martinez came with me, and we spent 4 days networking with researchers from Google, IBM, and various universities. On the last day of the conference, a woman approached me after my presentation. "Mira Chen, I'm Dr. Rachel Park from the NSF. That was an extraordinary presentation." "Thank you," I said, still not entirely used to being taken seriously by people twice my age. "I'm here because we're launching a new grant program for early career researchers in quantum technologies. Given your work, you'd be an ideal candidate. Are you interested?" "I'm only a freshman," I said automatically. "We know. We're specifically looking for researchers who show exceptional promise early. Your publication record speaks for itself." She handed me a card. "Think about it. The grant includes $150,000 in funding over 3 years, plus conference travel and equipment costs." I took the card with shaking hands. That grant application became my focus for April. Dr. Martinez helped me refine the proposal, Professor Chen reviewed the technical sections, and the Harvard Physics Department threw its full support behind my application. I submitted it in May. I won the grant in June. At 18 years old, I had $150,000 in research funding, 2 publications in top-tier journals, and a growing reputation in the quantum physics community. Everything my family had tried to take from me, I had built bigger and better without them. The summer between my freshman and sophomore year, I did an internship at MIT Lincoln Laboratory, working on classified quantum communication projects. The security clearance process required listing family contacts, and I put down estranged, no contact for all of them. The investigator called me in for an interview. "Your family situation," she said, reviewing my file. "Can you explain why you have no contact with your parents or sibling?" I explained briefly, professionally. I'd learned to tell the story without emotion by then, to present it as simple fact rather than trauma. She listened, made notes, and then said, "For what it's worth, cutting off abusive family members shows good judgment and strong boundaries. That's a positive trait in someone who will be handling classified information." I got the clearance. The internship was incredible. Cutting-edge work that I couldn't talk about but that challenged me in ways even my Harvard classes hadn't. I worked with a team of brilliant engineers and physicists, and I held my own despite being the youngest person in the lab by 5 years. In August, they offered me a permanent position after graduation. I was 19 years old, and I had job offers from MIT Lincoln Lab, Google Quantum AI, and 2 academic labs wanting me for PhD programs. I chose none of them, not yet. I had one more thing to do first. My sophomore year, I started a scholarship fund. I called it the Phoenix Scholarship for students from abusive family situations who needed support to escape and pursue higher education. I seeded it with $10,000 from my grant money and my internship savings, then reached out to the Harvard Alumni Network to raise more. The response was overwhelming. Within 6 months, we'd raised $200,000. Professors donated, alumni donated, people I'd never met who'd read my story donated. We gave our first scholarships in May of my sophomore year, 5 students, $10,000 each, for young people who'd chosen education over toxic families. I met each recipient personally. I told them they deserved their success. I told them cutting off family didn't make them bad people. I told them to never, ever, sacrifice their dreams for people who would never appreciate it. One girl, Emily, cried when I hugged her after the ceremony. "You saved my life," she whispered. "I thought I was the only one who felt this way." "You're not," I told her. "You're not alone, and you're not wrong. You're brave." Hostera Reeves, my counselor, attended the ceremony. Afterward, she pulled me aside. "You've turned your pain into something that helps others," she said. "That's remarkable, Mira. That's healing." I thought about my first life, dying alone, exhausted with nothing to show for all my sacrifices except debt and regret. I thought about waking up at 18 with a chance to do everything differently. I'm not healed, I admitted. I still have bad days. I still sometimes wonder if I made the right choice. And on those days, I remember that I'm alive. In every way that matters, I'm alive. That has to be the right choice. Junior year was when my family tried one last time. I was presenting at a conference in Boston when I saw my mother in the audience. She looked older, tired. She was sitting in the back row and she didn't try to approach me during the presentation. After I finished, as other attendees came up to ask questions and exchange contact information, she waited. When everyone else had left, she approached. "Mira, you need to leave," I said immediately, looking around for security. "Please, just 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking." Every instinct told me to walk away, but something in her voice made me pause. She looked defeated, broken. "5 minutes," I said. "Public space. Say what you need to say." We walked to a bench outside the conference hall. She sat with her hands folded, not looking at me. "Chloe is getting married," she said finally, "to a man who works at his father's car dealership. She's 23 and she's pregnant and she never finished college." I said nothing. "Your father's business went bankrupt. We lost the house. We're renting a 2-bedroom apartment in a bad part of town." Still nothing. "And her voice cracked, "I see you on social media. I see the conferences and the publications and the scholarships. I see you on the news sometimes, the brilliant young physicist who's changing the field. And I realize—" She looked at me then, and there were tears in her eyes. "I realized that I destroyed my relationship with the only child who ever had a chance at success. I chose Chloe over you every single day of your life, and she gave me nothing. And you gave me everything you had, and I threw it away." "Is this an apology?" I asked, my voice cold. "I don't know if I have the right to apologize. I don't know if you'd even accept it." "I wouldn't." She nodded like she'd expected that. "I don't want your money. I don't want you to fix our problems. I needed you to know that I know. I know I was wrong. I know I failed you. I know that everything that happened to you, you did despite me, not because of me." "You're right," I said. "You failed me. Every day of my childhood, you chose Chloe. You made me feel worthless and unlovable and expendable. You tried to steal my future to give to her, and when I wouldn't let you, you threw me away like garbage." "I know. And now you're here because you finally understand what you lost. Not because you love me, but because you regret losing access to my success." "That's not It is. If I were working at Walmart right now, you wouldn't be here. You're here because I'm famous and successful, and you want some of that reflected glory. You want to tell people you're my mother. You want people to think you had something to do with who I became." She was crying now, and I felt nothing. "You're right," she whispered. "You're right about everything. I was a terrible mother to you. I don't deserve your forgiveness." "No, you don't. Can I ask you one thing? You have 2 minutes left. Are you happy?" I looked at her, this woman who'd given birth to me but never really mothered me, who'd had 18 years to choose me and never did. "I'm happy," I said. "I have friends who love me, mentors who believe in me, a career I'm passionate about. I'm doing work that matters, helping students who need it. And I wake up every day grateful to be alive. So, yes, I'm happy. And none of that happiness includes you." "I'm glad," she said, and she sounded like she meant it. "I'm glad you're happy. Goodbye, Jennifer." I used her first name deliberately, removing the title she'd never earned. Don't contact me again. Don't come to my presentations. Don't tell people you're my mother. We're strangers, and that's how it's going to stay. I stood and walked away. I didn't look back. She didn't follow. I graduated from Harvard summa cum laude with a double major in physics and mathematics. I was 21 years old. Dr. Martinez hooded me at the ceremony. Professor Chen attended and brought half the MIT physics department with him. Patricia Knowles gave me a hug and told me she'd always known I'd make it. My Phoenix Scholarship recipients were in the audience, some of them now Harvard students themselves. I had a family, just not the one I was born into. I chose MIT for my PhD. Working with Professor Chen had always been the plan, and he'd built a research group specifically around my work on quantum encryption. I had full funding, a corner desk in the lab, and a collaboration agreement with Harvard that let me maintain my connections there. I published 6 more papers before I turned 25. I won the NSF Career Award at 26. At 28, I was offered a faculty position at MIT. At 30, I was granted tenure. I never married. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't need to. I had a life I loved, work that fulfilled me, and a community of brilliant people who respected me. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Chloe got divorced, remarried, and had 3 kids. That my father died of a heart attack at 60. That my mother lived alone in a subsidized apartment and told people her daughter was a famous physicist at MIT. I felt nothing about any of it. At 35, I won the MacArthur Fellowship, the Genius Grant. The ceremony was in Washington, D.C. As I accepted the award, I thought about my first life, dying at 23, exhausted and alone, having sacrificed everything for nothing. I thought about waking up at 18 with a second chance, with knowledge of the future and the determination to never again let anyone steal my dreams. I thought about every student I'd helped through the Phoenix Scholarship, every paper I'd published, every barrier I'd broken by refusing to accept the limitations other people tried to place on me. In my acceptance speech, I said, "This award honors my work in quantum physics, but what I'm most proud of is surviving a family that tried to convince me I was worthless. I'm here because I chose myself. If there are young people watching who are in similar situations, you are not selfish for setting boundaries. You are not obligated to sacrifice your future for people who don't respect your present. Choose yourself. The world needs what you have to offer." The speech went viral. I received thousands of messages from people in abusive family situations, thanking me for speaking out. The Phoenix Scholarship Fund grew to $5 million. I hired 2 full-time staff to manage it and created a mentorship program connecting recipients with professionals in their fields. Everything my family tried to take from me, I had transformed into something that helped countless others. That was my revenge. Not destroying them, but building a life so full and meaningful that they became irrelevant. I never saw my mother again after that conversation at the conference. I heard she died when I was 42, alone in her apartment, found 3 days later by a neighbor. Chloe called me, trying to guilt me into paying for the funeral. I hung up without saying a word. I didn't go to the funeral, I didn't send flowers, I didn't pretend to mourn a woman who'd never been a mother to me. I went to the lab and worked on my research. I had lunch with my postdocs, I video called with Maya, now a professor in India, and we laughed about old times at Harvard. I lived my life, and it was beautiful. At 50, I gave a commencement speech at Harvard. I talked about the girl I'd been at 18, scared, alone, but determined. I talked about choosing yourself even when it's hard, even when everyone tells you you're wrong, even when it means losing the only family you've ever known. Some of you in this audience are estranged from your families, I said, looking out at the sea of graduates. Some of you have been told you're ungrateful, selfish, cruel for setting boundaries. Some of you have been made to feel like you're the problem. You're not. You're survivors. And you're about to go out into a world that needs what you have to offer. Don't let anyone, not family, not friends, not partners, convince you to make yourself smaller, to make them comfortable. I was told my entire childhood that I wasn't as valuable as my sister because I wasn't pretty enough, likable enough, normal enough. But I had something she never had. I had me. I had my mind, my determination, my refusal to give up. And that was enough. It was always enough. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Afterward, a young woman approached me, probably 22, with nervous eyes and trembling hands. Professor Chen, Thank you. I cut off my family last year because they wanted me to drop out and get married. Everyone said I was wrong. Your story made me feel less alone. I hugged her. You're not alone. And you're not wrong. Keep going. It gets better, I promise. She cried in my arms, and I remembered being 18, crying in that Harvard apartment, wondering if I'd made the right choice. I had. 1,000 times over, I had. They say living well is the best revenge. They're right. I didn't destroy my family. They destroyed themselves through their own choices, their own cruelty, their own inability to see value in anything but superficial charm and traditional femininity. I simply refused to let them destroy me. I chose myself. I chose education, ambition, and excellence. I chose to believe I was worth more than they said I was. And I built a life so magnificent, so full of purpose and joy and contribution, that their opinions became meaningless. I am Dr. Mira Chen, professor of physics at MIT, MacArthur Fellow, author of 48 peer-reviewed publications, founder of the Phoenix Scholarship, which has helped over 500 students escape abusive families and pursue their education. I am the person my family said I could never be: happy, successful, and completely, gloriously free. And every day, I wake up grateful for that second chance, that moment when I chose to tear up those papers instead of signing them. That was the moment I saved my own life. Everything after that was just living it to the fullest.